see it in the way they parent. You see it in the way they parent, the way they discipline, the way they talk, the way they see the world, like certain advice that you receive.
Off. You know, it's especially on Twitter. People will be posting different. They'll be posting the same video with different takes, different angles. So you now be watching the same video over and over, and it's a form of meditation.
Because people have taken it too far, I almost don't want to hear it anymore.
Exactly. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of The Serve. I'm one of your co-hosts, Fumbi.
And my name is Sean.
And we have a lovely guest here today by the name of Tiffany Asuma. Introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Tiffany. I'm a Christian. I've pretty much worked in mental health most of my career. Like, that's what I'm passionate about. Currently working as a project officer. And also do some coaching as well for people. And
one of the things we wanted to talk about, like, mental health has become a big hot topic in today's generation, isn't it? It's something that's always spoken about in many arenas, and it definitely is spoken about in the church and affects the church as well. But before we go into that, there's a lot of buzzwords we see going around on Instagram, Twitter, etc., like narcissism, narcissist. What's the other ones? Depression, anxiety,
imposter
syndrome, all these things. Like, what is your take? Because obviously these are things that usually are actually diagnosed in the hospital, like you go through assessments. But now everyone's calling everyone a narcissist. What do you think about that?
So for me, at first, kind of appreciate. So before, a couple of years ago, we just didn't really talk about mental health. It was such a taboo. You wouldn't dare mention things like depression, anxiety in church. So on one end, it's good that people are more accepting, or not accepting. There's more awareness, and people are understanding these things are real and things that people are going through, and people feel more comfortable to talk about it. But I do think people have taken it too far. Like you said, something that requires a clinical diagnosis. Like, you need to a psychiatrist has to diagnose you with these things, but now everybody and their mate wants to be diagnosing people with narcissism. And I get it, you can identify narcissistic traits in someone, but that doesn't mean that they're
I think there's multiple things that they have to have at the same time for it to be narcissistic.
Well, because even with things like depression, I can have symptoms of depression, but that doesn't mean, if I was to go through an assessment with my GP, that doesn't mean I'm going to meet the threshold for diagnosis of depression. So there's the experience of it and the symptoms compared to the actual disorder. And I think people have gotten carried away with just labeling. You don't like someone, or maybe they're manipulative, they're whatever, and then now you've diagnosed them. Well, you haven't diagnosed them, but you're calling them something that actually requires a genuine diagnosis. So
pretty big.
So with for example, the term depression, how do we kind of distinguish or discern the difference between someone who's having a really bad day to someone who's actually depressed medically? What is the kind of the barriers, or not barriers? What's the parameter where you actually shifted?
So when I would assess people, so I used to work in a university as a wellbeing advisor, and people who said, I feel depressed and things like that, they will come in and we would assess them. And you have a proper form where you have to ask a number of questions, but usually you're asking someone, over the last 2 weeks, how often, for example, have you felt suicidal, or how often have you felt hopelessness? If the person answers that they've felt that way nearly every day over a long period of time, then that's probably a sign that, okay, this person isn't just having a bad day. But if it's a couple of days and you're feeling bad, then that's probably not depression. Depression is usually, it's been happening over a long period of time, and it is pretty much daily over a long period of time. So that's the difference.
So how would you kind of counsel someone who doesn't meet that depression clinical position, but they still feel bad about where they're at? What sort of advice or
so obviously you would do things you're identifying what is the cause, what is the root, and then there'll just be some practical things that you can suggest the person to do depending on what it is. If that person is constantly ruminating on negative things, you can simple things keeping a gratitude diary for a week. Those are really practical things that can help take you out of a space of low mood. But when you go into the more deeper side of it, that's where things like medication and stuff like that might come into the conversation. But yeah, on a more lower level, there are just like practical, things you can do, affirmations, like just really everyday things. I'd say.
Because I think it's useful to have the conversation, but personally I find that because people have taken it too far, I almost don't even want to hear it anymore.
Exactly.
Because people have just like, oh, I've got a bad day, oh, depression. It's like, obviously we don't want to trivialize the serious cases rather, but I think it's got to the stage where now it's gone over the top for me. So yeah, I'll leave it.
Because it's something you can't see, it's so easy to claim
Yeah.
as well, and then use it when you want.
Well, yeah, people use it so casually. It's like you're having a bad day, and it's like, oh, I'm so depressed. Like if I hear someone say that, I'll literally tell you off. Because I'll be like, you're not depressed. Like those are strong, like words. And as a Christian, I don't even know why anyone would confess that over their life. That, oh, I'm depressed. If you are like genuinely experiencing that, then you know there's help. But just a bad day, and you're pronouncing depression on yourself is a bit far. Yeah. But I don't know. I feel like there's a space to like listen and hear people out. But especially if you know the person and you're like, this person is just doing a bit too much.
But is there also a place for, like, again, me personally, I'm not a doctor or I'm expert in that field. I'm just basing it on experiences that I see. That naturally we're living in a society where people are just naturally less resilient. That's the better phrase. I was going to say something else, but that's better. They're less resilient.
Yeah, definitely. I feel our generation, the generation below us, is just becoming less and less resilient. I don't know why exactly, but definitely like compared to like our parents' generation, we just can't handle things like the simple, I don't know, inconvenience. Even be like, if I just have a bad day or something inconvenient happens, I just want to throw the whole day away.
But do we know, like in terms of numbers, like, because the generations before us wouldn't talk about it as much as we would, so maybe it was there and present, but no one spoke about it. Like, do we know maybe whether suicide gone up? Has it gone down?
It's going up, but then there's many reasons why that is. Yeah. It could be, I don't know, it's a bit hard with stats because it could be that thing of, it's because more people are talking about it.
That's true.
So it's not, I don't know, stats are something to work with, but you can't really make like definite conclusions. So it's a bit tough.
Because then, like, I look at our parents, they had it tough, but they just got on with it.
Yeah.
But then, is there a balance where they probably are dealing with undealt trauma, if that makes sense? Like, they've got trauma, but they haven't dealt with it.
Yeah, you see it in the way they parent.
Yeah.
You see it in the way they parent, the way they discipline, the way they talk, the way they see the world, like certain advice that you receive. The trauma is very much in that, and it's expressed that way. And the thing is about the older generation is it's very locked. Like, one thing I've learned is that don't stop trying to change them. Just manage like your own things.
Yeah.
So then, where do we get the balance where we kind of agree that our parents were more resilient than us, but then they've got trauma, they've got the same level of stresses or trauma or whatever word you want to use, but they just haven't dealt with it.
Yeah. But it's the balance of like what you said about resilience. So things aren't going well for me, but I'm not giving up. At the same time, I can recognize the emotions I'm experiencing. I can recognize I'm stressed. I can recognize, do you know what, I'm feeling a bit worried, whatever it is, and talking about those things. So that's the balance in that I identify those emotions, but then they're not controlling me to the point where now, like, I'm completely debilitated. And I can't do anything. I think that would be the balance.
I think the rise of social media as well. Someone said that because we see things really negative on social media, things where your parents may not have, you don't have the instant access to news like that. Yeah. So someone dies in Florida in a mad way. Do you know what I mean? And then you're hearing about it instantly. Yeah. We think, oh my God, that's so sad. But you don't actually know like what that's depositing in you. Like, you know how like therapists need to have therapy as well, because like the residue of what's being told to you can have an effect on you. It's the same with social media.
Yeah, definitely.
And people say that maybe that's why now we're a little bit less resilient, because we've got all this negative news that is in our heads, but what's the outlet?
The exposure is high, definitely. Even with things like killings, like you literally see people will be posting it on Twitter. Like, it's a lot for you to take in. But then we can't change that. I think the only thing we can do is managing
yeah.
like what we are exposing ourselves
Yeah,
to.
and
Like if you're
yeah.
constantly on social media, then you're gonna be exposed to that, and you're gonna have to wrestle with
Yeah.
those
And
things.
to be fair, you can control what you do watch. I remember there was a stabbing and someone posted a video into my WhatsApp group. I just chose to delete it. I was like, I
Honestly,
didn't
there's a
need to
lot of
watch
things
it.
that scroll past now. Like, I know I'm still dealing with this, but like things like, you know, like during the NSARS movement or like the Black Lives Matter during COVID and everything.
Yeah.
I was very much like watching it and on it and posting
Yeah.
about it then. But now
It's too much.
I scroll past it because I
Yeah.
thought, what can I do? Apart from pray, what can I really do?
Yeah.
So I just think I can't watch it because it's actually making me sad.
Yeah. But you're not ignorant. You're still aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's just like you're not sitting there and watching the videos because it's a
Yeah.
lot. Like I remember watching the George Floyd one. I think.
Oh, I put that off for ages
I was
before I watched
It
it.
took me ages to watch. I don't think
Yeah,
I don't
same.
think I've actually watched all of it. I've only
you
just
not?
seen the
little
pictures.
clip.
I've
Yeah.
just seen the pictures.
But you don't realize, like at first, it's like okay, I watched it, and you recognize that this is what's the word? This is
Murder.
yeah, and you feel some type of way after, but the carryover effects. I remember like for a good couple of weeks, just in that whole period where everyone was protesting, I just felt off. But it's because literally I've been watching, and I think I watched it more than once. Because do you know, it's especially on Twitter, people will be posting different. They'll be posting the same video with different takes, different angles. So you now be watching the same video over and over, and it's a form of meditation. Like when you're doing that, it's a form of meditation.
Yeah. So even as a Christian, like we have to be careful, like what it is we're looking at on social media.
Exactly.
Even me, like there's certain things that I unfollowed. Like there's some people that I followed where it's like they're not Christian, and it's like the stuff they're talking about. It's sin. Let's be real. It's sin. And what I mean by that is the reason why I was following this particular person. Obviously, I won't say the person's name. Is because it's like it's like it's culture.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like it's part of our black culture, black British culture. It's what's happening now. You want to be able to. Intrigues you. You want to be able to understand it. You want to be able to talk about it when other people are talking about it. But then I thought, this is highly sexual content. Why am I following this person?
I know you're
So I had to unfollow because I just
Yeah.
thought, what? There's no need for me to know all of this.
Yeah.
And also, it's a form of desensitization as
Yeah.
well. Certain things, if you keep hearing it over and over again, no matter how many times you go, that's bad, or da da da.
No, after a while you'll be like, it's normal. Yeah.
God forbid you're in a situation where you can do this something like that you've heard.
Yeah.
When you've heard other people's stories that they're doing it, and you think, oh, this is normal. Lots of people are doing it. Wow.
Yeah.
And then
No, you definitely become desensitized because if you're thinking about the same person.
Yeah.
Same person.
So-
When I used to see those tweets at first,
It's
I'd
a
be
big
like,
shock.
Yeah.
Now it's like
people
everyone
do
does
these
it.
things.
Yeah.
Now, like you said, everyone does it.
So yeah, careful who you follow, guys, because
Yes.
it has more of an impact on you than you think. Like we're all being controlled by something.
Yeah.
Whether you choose to accept it or not, it's better that you accept that. Okay, something is controlling me, or I'm being
Yeah.
influenced rather than something. Choose what influences you.
Yeah.
Choose to follow things that edify you and things
Yeah,
like that. It doesn't mean that
definitely.
you won't know about these things, but let's not focus on it.
Yeah, I agree. I think we definitely have to be more sensitive about that stuff because you can just think, oh, it's not that deep. Like, it's just a couple of tweets and all of that. But yeah, it is all a form of meditation. Is what you're allowing into your spirit. So you will see the effects.
So this term of narcissism, and as the mental health expert, can
Please
you
explain it.
define it? Because the way people talk about it, I admit I'm not an expert, but the way people talk about it, I personally think everybody has narcissism in them.
I was gonna say
I
that.
think the
yeah.
whole world is just narcissistic. However, can you get the proper definition from an expert?
So I don't think people have it wrong in terms of what it means, because first of all, it's a personality disorder, and then it's characterized by just having that sense of inflated importance above other people, entitlement, like manipulative, you put people down, things like that. So I think the definition of it is like quite basic, and you can see it and identify it, but yeah, it's just
Because based on that definition, like that self-inflated level of importance, you'll see that in something as small as a team meeting.
Yeah.
Where within a team, there's going to be like, whether at work, whether in your church, whatever sort of team there is, in a family. Let me just use a family, for example. Let's say for argument's sake, I'm a husband, I've got 2 children, I've got a wife, 2 children. For whatever reason, we've got less money to feed the whole family. me as an individual, naturally, as a husband, will think, okay, let me make sure my kids and my wife are sorted, then sort myself out.
Yeah.
Other people are like, nah, man, I can't do that. I'll do that myself. Is that person a narcissist? Or are they just looking out for themselves?
That's just the element, I think.
Yeah,
of it.
but I think what it comes down to is the whole, like, you would go through a method of diagnosis. So that is a trait, and that's a sign of like narcissistic behavior. But do I know you're clinically a narcissist? That I don't know. It's also possible that there are a lot of narcissists walking around we don't know, because it's not everyone that will volunteer themselves to go and see a doctor to diagnose them with narcissism. So it's very likely.
Yeah, because I'm giving trivial examples only because I'm trying to understand it from a basic level.
Yeah.
So obviously I do recognize there probably is like, what's the word? Really extreme versions of this. But let's say something, because like when I hear conversations of the way people talk about, oh, I couldn't do that for my wife, in terms of something as level of going out of your way to ensure something is sorted out for the household. So it could be something as, you know, oh, can you help the wife? You're getting the family ready for church, and then there's the mentality that a lot of men have that the wife will get the kids ready, and it's like, no, actually, you're allowed to help. Is that a narcissist, or is that a lazy?
Very selfish somebody.
But that's a level of inflated self, because you're selfish.
Yeah. It's the behavior, and you can call out the behavior and call it what it is. But whether that person is an actual like narcissist, I don't know. They could be, but
I think it was like what I said before in terms of it. There's a criteria, so it can't just be one. Like many of us have one. Because I've looked at posts and thought, am I a narcissist? Because I struggle with that. But it's like it probably has to be like multiple, almost where like it takes over your life.
Yeah,
like you only see through that lens.
Yeah,
and that's why I think I don't know. I think it's demonic. I really think it's demonic. Like, especially when it's to the point where it's taking over your life. It's just your personality.
Yeah.
That sounds like possession.
Yeah, well, personality disorders, I do think,
Yeah. So what do you think about that? Like, what is the spirituality behind, like, some of these disorders? Like, for example, narcissism. Like, do you think it's like, is it, you know, when they assess it, it's not, what's the word? You know, like with bipolar, they can actually measure it in your brain or something? They measure something, some sort of chemical.
They can do, so usually it would still be like tests. They don't put you through like a scan or anything like that.
But isn't there like a chemical imbalance that causes bipolar?
Yeah, but they wouldn't send you to the doctors and they do like a
so it's just based on what you say,
basically. Usually.
Interesting. I thought it was like black and white on paper. There's a chemical imbalance. So with narcissism,
so I think
no
like
that.
With the chemical imbalances, that there's been research. So there's the clinical practice side and there's the scientific research side, where people do study the brains of people with bipolar, schizophrenia, all of that, and then that's where you see those chemical imbalances. But in terms of like, God forbid, what if it was you? They're not going to send you to the doctors and put you through MRI to see if there's a chemical imbalance.
Okay, so it's based on what people say. Interesting.
What you're presenting.
But what if you don't have a right assessment of your own self, of what you're saying? So if I have an inflated sense of self, when they're asking me questions, I'm probably not going to give you good answers, accurate answers.
I feel like those people, especially like psychiatrists, there's a level of discernment and skill and experience that they have that even like a therapist, you could be sitting with a therapist and you'll be saying something and they will discern that what you're saying is the issue is not the issue. Like even with coaching, the same thing. Like sometimes people will bring me a problem. It's like, this is what I need help with. And the more they talk, I'm like, that's not really it.
Okay, yeah.
But you would wait for that person to get that realization. But in a clinical, more like psychiatry background, they will just, tell you what it is.
Maybe I am trivializing. I say that I need to kind of work on, but it really does sound like extreme selfishness. Because I see like some small example where you could ask someone, "Oh, can you lead prayer?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't want to. Why not? Because I don't want to." And it's like, stop thinking about yourself. Think about the bigger picture. Leading prayer is a benefit to everyone else. Can you do it, please? No, I don't want to. Is that person narcissistic or behaving narcissistic, or?
You know how you said it's extreme selfishness? Why can't you just call it that?
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't have to be
I don't understand. Everyone wants to label.
I'm trying to get understanding of it, if that makes sense. I don't have a conclusion. I'm still formulating the idea in my head.
But you as a person, because you're not a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
you can't then go.
No, of course, no. But this is why I'm
what
starting
people
from.
do.
Yeah, that's what people do generally.
Yeah.
But I'm starting from the point that why do we even have the label narcissist rather than just keep it as?
I don't. Yeah.
Because
I
it's
don't know.
different. It's different from selfishness, isn't it? I think
It's a
selfishness
part
is a
of
big
it.
element. I think it's probably
Yeah.
the root of it. But there's more things that they do as
Yeah.
well.
So it's not one behavior. It's a combination of many things.
Okay, what are some of the other things?
So there's the entitlement, there's the selfishness, there's thinking that you're better than everyone. There's manipulation is a big part of it. Generally putting people down, but to bring yourself up. So you feel threatened. If someone seems to be doing better than you, things like that, you feel threatened. So if that person is close to you, for example, let's say even say it's husband and wife, you'll want to put that person down so that you can feel better about yourself, essentially.
Okay, it sounds like they're just kind of different shoots from the same stem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you say people need to deal with narcissism? I've seen online the best way to deal with it
Oh, what have you seen?
to just not engage, and I think that is the best way.
Yeah.
Just don't engage. So if they say A, okay, they say B, okay.
But then
I'm not engaging
how
with
do you
you.
identify that person? Because like you mentioned before, it's not for us to kind of.
You would have been through time of abuse, I think,
Yeah.
to be able, right? You would
Yeah.
have, you will know eventually. And this is what I was gonna say as well. Like social media, like, do you think social media should be censored in a way? Like, you know how like during COVID, if people put out a video about COVID-19, they would censor it and say this is false or this is not from a official body.
Yeah.
Same with like, because there's so many reels on how to spot a narcissism, 3 signs of narcissists, how to do this, how to do that, and it's like, but you're not a clinical psychiatrist, you're not this, you're not that, and it's like, I think the rise of that is what's making us like be on such high alert for these things and labeling people those things. So do you think like it should be moderated?
I get the argument for censorship, but I just feel like that can go.
That's true as well. Yeah.
extreme
It depends
way.
on who's doing it. They always have an agenda, don't
Yeah,
they?
but for you, it's like you need to be your own censor in the sense of when you're watching someone's content, like, is this person actually a qualified psychologist? If you're just listening to one influencer talking about 3 signs of what a narcissist, then that's not smart. So like even with like coaching and stuff, there's bodies that regulate the profession. So if you want to go to a coach who's non-regulated, that's on you. But but then there's like organizations to regulate the same thing, like psychologists or counseling and things like that. Those are actually protected like terms, protected professions. So it's up to you to just know who you're listening to, basically.
And they make it seem really difficult for narcissists to not be narcissists. I don't know if you've heard that, seen that. Like they're like, it's almost like they can't be healed from it.
They definitely can.
You think they can?
Yeah.
I saw there's a guy that I've seen who he's he's been diagnosed, self-confessed narcissist, and he's like, he's on his journey of healing. He's got a YouTube channel and everything where he talks about it, and so people like asking questions like, oh, my boyfriend's a narcissist, what do you think about this situation, how should I handle it, what's his thinking process here, and he just talks about it, and it's quite interesting. But the fact that he keeps saying I'm a narcissist, as in I've been diagnosed as a narcissist, but I'm healing.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about that? Should someone like that have that kind of a platform?
What to share?
Is it healthy?
I don't think there's too much harm in it. It depends on like, I don't know. They've been quite honest in the sense of I'm diagnosed and I'm on a journey of healing. So I think because that person's being transparent, then like it's okay. But then with everything, I just think you just have to be careful what you're listening to. Like take everything with a pinch of salt. But in terms of your question about can someone be healed, there's nothing God cannot
There's
heal.
nothing God cannot do. I believe that, yeah.
I
think some nice deliverance will do them well.
Laying off hands it. But yeah.
So how would you say like trauma plays a role in relationships, in romantic relations that is? So let's say, for example, someone who's been through like abuse in their past and they're now coming to a relationship with another person. Is it common for them to kind of take out their previous trauma on the person that they're seeing right now and things like that? And how do they navigate that?
Yeah. I think if the person recognizes that they've been through trauma and like, let's say they've gone through a process of whether it's, counseling in your church or with a therapist, I feel like you're in a better position to be in a romantic relationship. But if this person, let's say you've just come out of an abusive relationship and it's like on to the next one, it's very likely that you're gonna put a lot of stuff on that person, whether it's lack of trust, whether it's just like anxiety or just being really insecure. And I can imagine for another person, let's say it's the man, like constantly being like, let's say, accused of things or things you do being read the wrong way, and it's got nothing to do with anything you've done, but because of the person who that they've been with before, then it would affect the relationship. So I think if you have been through that type of situation, like, you need to definitely get help before entering into any kind of romantic relationship. If not, it will.
Because as they say, like, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of identify the difference between somebody who's generally hurt and someone who's toxic?
Someone who's hurt and someone who's
like you're dating someone, but they're just toxic. They're just they're toxic.
How would you identify the difference between someone who's hurt and someone who's toxic?
I think they both have the same effect, isn't it? Even though like one might not have the intention to because it's from trauma, whereas the other person has the intention to. It has the same, almost has the same result. So, which is why we say, like, you know, in our faith, like, date whole, like, be whole before you go into dating. If you are broken from trauma and all these type of things, like, you're not gonna present your best self, and therefore you're gonna hurt the other person. So
I think the two are linked. Like, if you're hurt, like you said, the behaviors you'll display in that relationship, someone on the outside will be like, you're toxic. Like, if you're that person who constantly needs to check someone's phone and do stuff like that, people would observe that objectively, like, you're toxic. But you would know that you would say to yourself, I'm not toxic, but you know, the last person I was with, they would lie to me, they would cheat, they would do all of those things. So,
because I think it's the reason why I want us to kind of drill in and understand the difference, because the way you respond to them will be different. So someone who is dealing with trauma, you're more, and you're aware of it, you're more likely to kind of be patient with such an individual. Whereas if it's someone that's just toxic, that's the person you're saying, red flags, walk away.
But even that toxicity comes probably from trauma. It's just people have different personality types. So where for someone it could be like, oh, I feel bad for them. Other people are more bold and brash and angry with it. It just depends how it comes out. So I think probably everyone, even people with like healthy upbringings, there's some form of trauma that you're dealing with, because the people in our lives are not perfect. So some way, somehow along the line in your life, someone would have said something to you, or done something to you, or not done something to you, or not said something to you, that causes a little bit of trauma inside you. Obviously, everyone's level of trauma is different, and how everyone deals with it is different. But it's just the way we're all navigating life.
But I think even with being toxic, you have to eventually like draw the line and be like, it's not okay for me to.
The person needs to be willing.
Like if someone like is toxic and they recognize, maybe let's not even say that they don't think they're toxic, but they think that some of the behaviors are toxic. If you refuse, like, no, this is just how it's going to be, then
Because let's say someone who had a partner that was beating them, for argument's sake. Now they've left that person, they're moving to another person. They're naturally defensive whenever someone they might be going out for a hug, but just because them raising their hands in that of reaching out for a hug, their natural instinct is to kind of defend themselves. That's obviously someone that's dealing with trauma. But if they now, anytime there's an argument, that person's ready to fight. Because of what's happened in the past. Now, obviously, that's someone that's not necessarily toxic, but they're dealing with an issue. So it's like, how do we kind of get that balance to when dealing with that individual?
I think in either scenarios, like, that person needs help, to be honest.
So do you think we all need therapy?
I feel like it would be useful for everybody once in their life to
do it.
And it doesn't even necessarily need to be like with, obviously, like, I would promote like speaking to a therapist, but like your pastor, for example,
that is a form of therapy.
Like they're in a position to, like, hopefully to counsel you. Like, it'd be disappointing if you're in a church and your pastor, you can't go to your pastor for counselling. I think the only thing with therapy is the fact that it's someone who doesn't know you, they don't know your past, like, they're completely objective.
Do you think it's better with somebody that doesn't know you compared to someone that does?
I don't know if better, but there's pros and cons to, like, both. I think the pro with someone who doesn't know you, there's no form of bias. They're not like pushing any part of like what they think they know. Like it's completely based on what you're giving them. But then that's also a con because they don't know you.
They could be telling you something that's got nothing, that doesn't relate to you whatsoever.
So I just feel like there's pros and cons, but you can always do both. To be honest, like there's no harm in. I would like advise that speak to your pastors in your church, but then also speak to like an objective third party as well. Like it doesn't have to be one or the other, but you should be able to speak to your
because I do lean into what Fumbo was saying earlier in terms of, I think everybody has a level of, for lack of a better phrase, and this is not PC, I apologize, but I can't think of a better word, but I think we're all mad to an extent, that there's a level of mad that we all have to deal with. Like I've just concluded that when you have a partner, just recognize what level of mad you can handle. Because I think everybody's got a level of madness. I have my own issues. I know that for a fact, and I'm just grateful that my wife is still there. And obviously the issue that I'm working towards in dealing. So, that's why I do kind of understand the sentiment of, therapy. I do think it's needed. I have my issues with some of it.
What's your issues?
I think with a lot of therapy, and I'm speaking this because my wife is actually going through the course, but I think there's a lot of babying in therapy where it doesn't seem to be enough emphasis on taking action and being accountable for some of the things that we need to do. It's like, okay, yeah, fair enough, this has happened to you, this has happened to you, let's talk about it, etc., etc. Okay, then, but what about where's now the room for that person or individual, let's say it's me, for example, for me to actually, okay, now this has happened to me. I need to do X, Y, and Z. Because I can't be a victim forever. There has to come to a place where I take control of that situation.
But then that's where you can have both. Because like for a therapist and the counsellor, like they have boundaries in the sense of I can't tell you, like, as in, so they don't get banned from their profession.
Of course.
I can't tell you to do. So they have their own boundaries that they need to work within. But this is where you can do both. Like, you've now been through therapy, you've been through counselling, you're more informed, you have more understanding. You can take that to like your pastor or your mentor, whoever, and like work with that. So that's what I mean. It doesn't have to be either or. You can do like both of them have its place, and it probably would be more effective if you actually did do both.
Okay,
I'm within your friendship groups as well. Like if you have friends that encourage and build you up, like talking with them as well should help to reinforce what's happening in therapy and hold you accountable.
Like therapy is not the answer to your emotional problems. Like it's just part of what can help you. So if someone goes to therapy thinking this person is going to solve all my issues, once I finish this therapy I'm going to be healed, you're going to be in for a real shock.
And I think that's probably why I do push back on it, because that's how people talk, like to say therapy is the problem, that we need therapy, I need therapy, you need therapy.
No,
have you ever had therapy? Have you ever had it?
Not professional therapy.
Yeah,
outside, like with a like counselling. I've only just had conversations. I realised, wow, the Holy Spirit is really speaking, snitching up.
It's part of it, isn't it? Like if an athlete was injured and they're going through rehabilitation and recovery, it's not just going to be a physio they see. They're going to be having different forms of treatment. So the same way with like your emotions or like healing and things like that, like therapy is just one aspect.